Welcome to the Felt Dyslexic podcast. My name is Liz Buckridge. For me, as a dyslexic artist, other artists and creatives have always been my number one inspiration. On this podcast, we talk with other artists and creatives who share their stories, and we gain insight into their process from inspiration to art tips, career building, and more. We're so lucky to listen to the wisdom of Chris Wyllie today. I'm so excited to hear about his past and future projects and insight as life as an artist. Hi, Chris. Thank you for talking with us today.
My pleasure.
Okay, I'm going to jump right in. So, describe the art you make. What mediums do you primarily work in, and how did you choose those mediums?
Primarily, I think that the medium is, most people say what medium, they'll say oil or acrylics, things like that. But rather, for me, it's more the object that I paint on. So I collect different things, whether it's old signs or doors or parts of cars, and then I'll paint an image on it. So it's really kind of whatever will stick to the image, and I'm primarily using enamels, like sign enamels, because the color's really bright and it adheres, and then I don't have to worry about it. Not that they're going to be hung outside, but still, But then I also will use like acrylics for other things, But mostly it's enamel, and then the objects are whatever they tend to be, whatever I find.
A lot of metal, it seems like.
There's a lot of metal in
A
here
lot of
now,
wood too, though.
and yeah, right now one of the things I'm using mostly is the lath. It's the strapping from the walls, what they used to put up to put plaster on, and a lot of it came out of the Newport Opera House when they were started renovating it in I guess 2015 or so, and I pulled out almost every single piece of lath in that building. So that building was built in 1967. So I always figure like the tree that it grew on was probably grew in 1867, so it probably was started growing in 1820. So I feel like the art's already about 150 years old.
That's so cool. Anything else? Any other kind of? I'm looking around your studio right now, but is that mostly like wood and metal and
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of signs. I mean, there's a lot of blank signs behind you that are kind of on deck. Then there's parts. There's a center board right there, and then in the window there's a keel with a rudder with a mermaid painted on it, and that has a bunch of orcas painted on it. Kind of, when I painted that one, the orcas they're still doing it, but we're attacking the boats off near the Strait of near Gibraltar. You know what I mean? And I know I thought it was apropos, so did it.
that's pretty cool. How did you get into making art?
Well, I always wanted to be an artist. When I was a kid, in fact, I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, and I had written a story, and I did some pictures for it, and and it's like I remember showing it to my mom, and she was like, I said, when I get older, I want to be, an artist and write books. And she said, oh no, sweetheart. She said, you have to do something that makes money, but which is like your typical Portuguese mother's, she's not gonna let you be an artist. That would be like considered child abuse in my family. So I kind of shied away from it and really never really was into anything. And then, like I never really had a focus besides kind of wanting to make things. And then when I left college, I started a painting company and then got into film production and did that for a while, and then got into graphic design, and then I got into kind of fell in accidentally to decorative art, and I specialized in decorative plasters and like faux finishes, and then did that for about 8 years or so, and in 2005 I decided to not take any more clients for 2 months in July and August of 2000. So it was 2006, and I took those 2 months and I went into the studio. I had a studio in a barn, and I went in there every single day for 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I just stayed there and painted. No matter, I wouldn't let myself leave. And it just kind of like the first 2 weeks were kind of, it just, things weren't clicking. I was just doing things, but then I always kind of say like the muse showed up, and it's like all that kind of like the squirms and the struggles, the blocks, kind of fell away, and I just started creating things. And and I've been using that technique ever since, where I just kind of like, I know that if I just show up and I do the daily, then something will come out of it. So it's not really, I'm not really forcing it. I'm forcing myself to be there, but then the work kind of comes. So that's the story about it.
That's really cool. How did you get into your specific style?
Well, it was in 2003, and I was actually in therapy because it was 2002, and like my entire decorative art business collapsed after 9/11. I had 7 jobs lined up, and every single one of them canceled for various reasons. Like some people, one woman's brother was on a plane, one woman's son was in the building. It was just like this horrible connection, and um, so anyway, I was depressed, obviously, and it was just a terrible time. But so I started going to therapy, and the therapist was over near Kent Hospital, Kent County Hospital, and there was a farm right across from him. And every time I would go, every Monday I would go by, and at the end of the driveway of this farm was this big pile of junk, and it had all different stuff in there. But there was this old refrigerator, this Kelvinator refrigerator. It was probably 1949 or something like that. And I would go by. I was like, I got to grab that door. It was just like it was just so cool. And then I did, like, when after like a month of passing it by, I went and I pulled over, and I grabbed it, threw it in my trunk. It's rather the back of my pickup truck, and then I took it home, and I didn't paint on it for a while, but I knew I was going to paint something on it, and it was interesting because it was like the next week I went by and all the junk was completely cleared out. So I felt like it felt kind of like it was not destined, you know what I mean? But yeah, but it was perfect timing, you know what I mean? I rescued it, and then I had it there in I had a studio in my basement where I was living in Providence, and it reminded me of an old, like kind of the old airplanes, the bomb, I forget whether they were B-2s, or I forget what they were in World War II. But so I painted a pinup girl on it, yeah, just like they would have that nose art, and it just was not looked perfect, but it fit perfectly on it, and then I put it up. I had a party, you know what I mean, and it was the only piece of art on the wall at the party that was illuminated. Everything else was kind of dark, and there was a lot of candles there and stuff. But the atmosphere was great, and 3 people wanted to buy it, and and I was like some person offered me, like 2 people offered me 1,500, and one person offered me 3,500, and I was like, I just didn't want to sell it. So so I didn't sell it. It's actually, I let Rich from Caleb and Broad borrow it. It's hanging on his wall now, and it's been following me around from all over the place, New York, California, and then back here, and I just keep it for myself. I'm not going to sell it. So, but that just kind of, because it was so natural to paint something on that object really called for that type of image. I started, I've always collected stuff. I started collecting stuff, and I really didn't have a place to put it, you know what I mean? And by that time I had moved to Newport, and I would store it all in my father's in my parents' basement, and he hated it because he'd be like, Mr. You gotta get this stuff out of here. I'd be like, he goes, I'm gonna throw it away, and I said, do not throw it away. So I had this old boat transom that I had, and I ended up painting a mermaid on that. And then at my first show, which I sold out everything at my first show in Newport, I had a mermaid on it, and it sold for like $1,200 or something like that. But it was like he was blown away, and then he started collecting junk for me. But some of the stuff was really junk. But anyway, so that's how it kind of like, I just started collecting things and I could see the image of what I wanted to paint on it when I saw it. The image, the piece almost called for the image that ended up on it.
So
So,
how do you like where does that inspiration come from? Do you even know? Like the
not,
images that you see when you
well,
see the
I think the the images come from all different places, but I do, like, I'll think about it and I'll try to, like, like, it'll be a feeling in a way. Like right now I'm planning this mural, and it's just a blank wall, and it's like trying to think what I should put on it. But I just So I was sitting in front of the wall and just thinking like, how do I want to feel when I'm on this, when I'm looking at this wall, you know? And I've got carte blanche to do whatever I want. The client is not, doesn't care what I do on it. Really no, you know, no, no restrictions or guidelines. So I just go how I feel, and a lot of times that's what it is. And sometimes it's on the nose, you know what I mean? Like it's like a mermaid on a butter is kind of, you know, it's obvious, you know. But then other times it's not, you know, and other times it's and sometimes I think it's funny, you know what I mean? And then and other times but it's never serious, and but it's certainly you know, but it's always fun, and like I always feel like the you know like I think art should with your my thing is with people I tell them like you know it's like you love something buy it put it on your wall look at it every day it'll change your life and because it just by looking at something beautiful or whatever that you like and it could be anything and it's like it's you know it's like who you fall in love with it's like you might think they're great but I might be you know whatever but it's art's like that it's personal so um I completely lost my track.
Oh, it's just so inspiration. I think you
Yeah,
answered me
how
totally,
do I get
completely.
but like so how do I choose what goes on it? But it's yeah, like so it I feel like the pieces one they almost some come right away. I know right away when I'm doing it. And then others, like I have a thing over there that's been I I built it in 2015 and it still doesn't have an image on it, you know what I mean? But it's also pretty good just by itself. So maybe that's what it needs to be. So
Hmm. Uh, okay, so I'm dyslexic. I'm a dyslexic artist.
mhm.
And so I'm asking almost everybody, do you consider yourself neurodivergent or neurotypical?
I wouldn't say I was neurotypical at all, but I, you know, no, I mean, I had a horrible time in school, and I just, yeah, so it wasn't great for me, but you know, and spelling was always like a spectator sport because I just, you know, I just can't spell anything, and but you know, but and then I've never been tested for dyslexia, but there was this David Geffen documentary not too long ago, and wasn't about David Geffen, but it was about dyslexics, and it was and guy from Virgin, what's his name, and David Geffen, and a bunch of other people, and they were describing. And I always thought dyslexia was like you read backwards, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know what it was, and but the way they described the way they were, I was like, yeah, that's totally me. That made sense, and I never realized, oh, it's like you know, and you always think that everyone's like you, like that you know what I mean, like you know what you see as blue or what I see as blue is what everyone sees, but you don't know what people what they see or how they think. So I relate with that. I relate with what that documentary was about, but I can't say that I actually am because I don't had someone
You just know you think differently.
100%.
So have you ever faced any challenges or setbacks in your art career? I guess like you said that with 9/11, everybody canceled on you. Is that's the big one? Is there any other that you can think of?
Well, 2008 was like 2008. I like in started painting full time as an artist in 2005. Yeah, 2005, kind of, well, 2006, and then I opened my first public gallery in December 1st of 2006. So I started selling art and I was completely living just on selling art. And then it started clicking. And then I went down to Miami to do a plaster job. I sold this couple of painting and they were saying, they were talking, we need someone to do decorative plaster. I said, I used to do that. And they said they had this huge apartment in Miami. So I went down to Miami, and then I ended up meeting a friend of mine introduced me to this woman from the Whitney Museum, and she asked me to be part of this like group show for their art party. And then I did that for a number of years, and then but via that I met Emily Fisher Landau, and she bought some of my work, and then ended up donating it to the museum. So I was then in there. So everything started clicking, you know. And then I moved to New York City in August of 2008. And I had this other, I was selling art, but I also had this huge plaster contract to do. That was, you know, it was like $100,000. And then it just like, then everything crashed, you remember? And then like the plaster job got smaller and smaller and smaller until it wasn't existent. And I was like, you know, starving again. No one was buying art. No, yeah, my art anyway So yeah, like I moved out of New York City, came back in spring of 2009, and I set up a gallery studio down on Lower Thames Street, and um, just started making art. And I had absolutely no money, and it sucked, you know. But what I ended up doing, I ended up making this little these because I was starting to make these paintings in like 2007, 2008. The prices were going up, and I was selling things for like $5,000 or so. You know, anywhere from like 1,200 to 5,000 was kind of the top. And I didn't want to lower my prices because I thought, you know, I don't want to devalue the work, so I didn't do that. So that's why, you know, like nothing was selling. And so I decided to, and all along, ever since I started painting, I would always make these kind of like these like really fast landscapes on driftwood and things like that. So what I did was I created I created these little square canvases that were 8 by 8 inches, and I would frame them in the lath, like I was talking about earlier, and they really look cool. And they were just these little beach scenes with this little strip of sand and water and like huge skies. And I did that under nom de plume. That way I didn't have to like, you know, and I could, I mean, I could, my record was painting, I could paint 60 in an hour. And then, so I was like, you know, and then, but framed and labeled and boxed and everything, it came out to like 15, 20 in an hour. So I sold them really inexpensively, wholesale. But the wholesale people had to buy 36. And then I sold them retail as well. So that kind of kept me afloat for until things started picking up again, which wasn't really until 2000, like Christmas 2010. So it was like over a year. But that got me through, and it was great. It was one of the best times of my life because I ended up getting in this great studio down on Thames in Stockholm, which was totally way out of the way. It was an old laundromat that my friend Ed had. He was renovating the house, but when everything crashed, he lost everything as well, and he had this house that, you know, was basically going to be foreclosed. And so he said, "Yeah, just go ahead and use it." And I had this enormous studio, wide open space, and I had like 3 workstations, a living room, a refrigerator, and kitchen, and then this huge walk-in shower, which I used to like wash all the doors in there in the shower and stuff. And then it was great. You know what I mean? It was like I didn't need anything, and my overhead was super low, and I just made art. Really one of the most productive times of my life.
That's cool. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pawtucket, and I was born on the same street as my mother and my grandfather, and so I grew up there, and there were other relatives in the area. My dad was, you know, born down the street as well, so it, so I kind of like, you know, I don't spend much time in Pawtucket anymore, but it's like that's really kind of my home, you know what I mean? In a way, I feel like, but Newport is really my home because when I moved to Newport, what really struck me about living here was that it reminded me of Pawtucket. You know, it looks like Pawtucket in a lot of ways. It's, you know, believe it or not, you save for the mansion, although there are mansions in Pawtucket, but you know, not French chateau mansions. That's the one thing Pawtucket doesn't have, but in a horse track. But it was yep, I don't know, like it's just my father loved Pawtucket, and there was like several clubs, like these old like dinner dance clubs, and that were like there was the Bug Club, the Monitor Club, and there's something else, I forget the other one, but like, we'd go out to dinner every Saturday night. The whole family would go, and we'd always go to some different restaurant, and it was really social. You know, like my dad knew everybody, and it was fun. You know, I remember how social it was, and I really never experienced that until I came down to Newport, and Newport has that vibe. You know, I mean, you know, it's like it's you walk down the street and you talk to people. It's like you know, like if I'm in a hurry, I won't go to A Market because it's like, you know, that's going to take an hour. You know what I mean? So at least an hour. So it's like, you know, I liked that, and I felt at home.
You talked a little bit about doing art when you were a little kid.
Yeah,
What kind of art did you do way back then? Do you
just
remember?
drawing. There was a lot of like storytelling. You know, what I mean, like I had everything seemed to have a story to it. You know, there was a narrative. Um, but just a lot of drawing, and then, you know, and I even when I like even the games that I like to play were all about like there was something going on, like either it was war or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that. And then so it. but the artwork was like that. And then in like and in school, it's like whenever it was art time, I went to this really small Catholic school, so there's only about 18 kids, and I'd be drawing, and then I would have like this line of kids like up by my desk that would have me come and fix their drawings, and I'd get back to mine, and you know what I mean. So it was like there was like this line of people wanting me to like, can you do this, and I would do, so it was, but
That's a
it's
great image.
yeah,
I love that image. Okay, so this
good
one
art stuff.
happens to be one of my favorite subjects ever. What is your favorite colorway for your art? And is the colorway for your art the
What do you mean
same
colorway?
colorway, like the colors you use, like the color palettes that you
Yeah, yeah,
tend to use all the time?
yeah.
And are those colors what you choose for your home?
Well, I mean, this is my home, so yes, you know what I mean. Like, yeah, and um, yeah, I tend to where I live is really every place I've lived is kind of where I've worked, and that's been since 2010 basically. And but as far as colors, it's like I think I'm just really attracted to kind of like really natural colors. And but with the work, I do like especially with the sign paints is I like to, they can be very bright, but a lot of times I'm just using black paint. If you look like there's I go through I'll use Rust-Oleum for black, and I'll go through 5 quarts of black paint, and by the time I go through like one, orange or yellow or something, I use a lot of it. And so really they're kind of a lot of the paintings are just monochromatic. Like the one behind you is definitely it's mostly black, and then I threw in those 2 colors, but it's mostly black.
Yeah, your
Which
colors
is
seem to
yeah.
be from the earth for sure.
Mhm.
Very natural, except for the pop, but the pops you see in nature too.
For sure. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Um, so describe where we are, this space where,
This is Caleb Earl Street, and this I don't know how old this building is, but it's going to be 18, certainly 1800s. You can still see the gas pipes coming out of the ceiling, and there's I have 2 storefronts. This is my workspace, and then next door will be the show space, and it's they're old storefronts. Like I know that one was a bar because this old man came by with his I don't know who she was, but she was much younger than he was, and kind of like taking care of him. But he was saying that he remembered being a little kid and sitting on the stoop right there and waiting for his grandfather to come out because his grandfather was in the bar, and then his mother walked by and grabbed him and yelled at the grandfather. So like that was a bar in there, and there used to be a bar next door as well. So, but and that was also Charlie Duncan's sign shop. Remember Charlie Duncan? He was died about maybe 10 years ago. So, and years ago, and he was a local sign maker. He made neon, and he was also on city council. So he was cool. He was a good guy, and I always I used to go visit him and talk to him and stuff, and I just kind of like always kind of coveted his space, you know what I mean? And then I ended up with it. So cool.
a cool story. Did your school system support your art growing up? When the kids were in line, like waiting
Yeah.
to see your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in that way, I mean, I always felt like I was appreciated that way. And then in 6th grade, Sister Leah, who was probably one of my favorite teachers ever, she was really great. And I think she just liked me, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think there's probably other kids she didn't like, I think that's what it is. People think teachers are bad. It's just that they don't like you. But I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but that feels true. And but we had it was a square room obviously, and then there was blackboards on the edges in the back that were not used, and so I asked if I could do a mural on it with chalk, you know what I mean? So I did murals, and they would change periodically, and so I did that, and then she would always give me like an assistant, so like the assistant and then whoever wanted to, and then it got to the point where I would draw it, and then I would make a mark in it, and then different kids would color it in. So they were, so, but that's it. I've never, ever, ever taken one art class in my life. And there was no art in grammar school. We cut out, manila paper every once in a while, do that. And then in high school, there wasn't any art. There was a theater class, but I didn't take theater. And then there was nothing. I think they have an art program now, but they didn't back then.
Um, do you see your work evolving? Like, how do you see it evolving and changing in the future?
Well, right now I'm working on two different series, and it has to do with the wood because the lath wood, and I'm doing a beach series, and I'm doing a chairlift skiing chairlift series. I did one last year, and then I made two besides, and they were very popular. And I've been wanting to. In fact, I was going through my phone yesterday, and I saw it, like I had taken a screenshot of a guy in a chairlift, and I was like, that would make a good painting. And uh, and I and uh, and that was 4 years ago. So it took me 3 years to make it and to get around to it. So, but this winter I'm gonna make that. I'm doing that series, and like so, I always feel better when I work in a series. Like even there, like I just produced those canvases right there that are license plates, and I made 12 of them, and those are gonna be for the art street fair. And so I'm trying to work more in series because when you work in a series, you solve different problems in it, and the work evolves, and you get to use all the same paint, and I mean, it's more efficient. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing that. So, but also I have several children's books that I've written, and now illustrating is not my uh, in my comfort zone at all. And for some reason I've been procrastinating on this for ages, and but so I'm working on that, and I was having a hard time figuring out how I wanted to make the illustrations look like my work, but so I figured out the aesthetic of the book that I want it to be, and now I made the master drawing for that, and I'm going to move that on, and so that's my other.
I'm super excited for that. I love children's books. Is making art emotional or a strategic process for you?
What do you mean strategic?
Like, it seems like you do plan it out, like how you work in series and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Like, is it well planned or is it just emotional? Well, I'm not going to answer for you.
Okay, you can. I It's, I mean, of course it's well planned. I mean, like but when I feel like I'm more disciplined, I'm working with a plan to make things that where there's more of a cohesive body of work, but like I am now. And then, like when I wasn't feeling great in the past, and I kind of would just let things go by themselves and just make a piece, and, and, or, and so, but then I also, like, I work whether I feel like working or not, but I don't I have different energies, you know what I mean? So like sometimes I'm collecting, and then sometimes I'm building canvases or cleaning them and preparing. And then sometimes I'm creating the image, and then I'll take a picture of the piece, and I'll put it, and I'll see what image fits on it. And then, and see how it looks. And if it looks good, digitally, then I'll create it. So, you know, that's very strategic, but as far as like, I'm not really making things that I think will sell, you know what I mean? But I also do things that I make things because I like them, you know what I mean? And like it seems fun, you know what I mean? And like it's fun to look at. So, in a way that's a strategy, so it's more intuitive.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's both for you because when you walked by that refrigerator, the image just came to you. But
Right.
then you also have a very planned process too.
Mhm.
And that was the other thing I was going to ask you is how do you combine like the art you like to make and then the art you want to sell? You're saying you just make.
Well, a long time ago, I decided that I was having a hard time selling things, like especially that first piece, and other pieces when I first started. So I decided that I would one out of every 10 pieces I would just keep for myself, and I wouldn't be sold, and I wouldn't have to feel guilty about it. It would just be reserved. And and then everything else I put like a fair price on it. At the time I had a formula for it, and I still pretty much do, and I just sell it.
That's pretty cool. I like that. One out of what is it? One out of
10, so 10%, everything. So
that's
yeah.
so much. Um, so how do people find your art to purchase?
Well, I'm very uh, visible, and my art's in a lot of places around Newport, and although this studio is out of the way, it's kind of down the side street. No, I've I've always been on kind of Main Street, so it's I had a public space, and when I had been painting in that barn when I first started, I painted beyond the 2 months that I dedicated initially. I kept painting after that, and but I ran out of weather, and it started getting cold, and then so I just started asking people that I knew if they knew anyone with a like studio space or a storefront. I forget, and the first person I asked had that, so I decided I rented this great place over on Thames Street, corner of South Baptist, had a little courtyard, and it was big, and I just started working there, and I had heat and everything else that I needed. So, and I've always been in storefronts ever since, and because it kills two birds with one stone. You know what I mean? Like you can create and people can see it's incidental. And I always sold enough work to at least pay for my rent in the beginning, and so it just kind of worked.
Do you have a website?
I do, yeah. Of course, chriswyllie.com. Yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Mm.
Um, can you share a recent project? Well, I guess, the the things that you're making for the street fair, but or particularly that you're particularly happy with, a
Um,
project that you're happy with.
um, that's finished.
Well, yeah. So I guess one that you're working on, and then one that you've done that you're
Okay.
like really happy about.
Well, I recently did a commission for a client of a rowboat with oars and resting on a sand dune, and there was a beach fence, and so I kind of I didn't know what colors I wanted to use in it, and so I wanted to look good in the room, so I was testing out colors, and I decided, what, I'm just going to make 6 little tiny wooden canvases, and I will make a bunch of quick dune paintings and see what they look like. So I did that, and I have them. And then when they were done, I I put some like girls in bathing suits on the same type of material, and I painted those and then cut them out with a bandsaw, and then I placed them on it. So there's these great little beach scenes. Those are the ones that are in the window right now, and I think those are great. I love the way those came out. So I was really happy with that. 6 of them, and um, but every year I do a Christmas show, and I make Christmas ornaments. I've been doing it since 2006, and this year I make various ones. You know what I mean? Like I have these little heads where the hair is tinsel and stuff, and then but I'm also doing this year. I've been collecting Fireball nip bottles. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna do these little tiny dioramas in the inside of them with like drunken bad Santas. You know what I mean? So that's gonna be, and I'm excited about that. Although I haven't even made one yet. So, it always it always goes like to the last minute, So, but which really motivates, It'll be
Yeah, a
cool.
deadline.
I'm just gonna have like 6 versions. So we're gonna be like collect all 6 type of thing. You know what I mean? So.
How do you stay motivated?
I love I it's funny because it's like I in a lot of my life I don't, like I could be sitting on a nail, just more figuratively, and I won't get up and move because it's just like I'll just endure the pain. But with painting, it's like I know the feeling of finishing, and it's like I love it. I love making things. I love collecting things. I love creating the image for it, and I love connecting with people when they like it and they want to buy it. I love hanging it in their house. I love the whole process. it's like it's kind of like the one area in my life where I know exactly what I'm doing, and I feel that way. Feel like I know what I'm doing, and it's like, in fact, when I have a client, I had a client recently, someone wanted me to do a mural, and he was like, oh yeah, well you should do it. And I finally said, I'm not the right guy for the project. Find someone else, because it wasn't gonna be any fun. He wanted me to do something stupid, and I wasn't gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like, it's like, do you want it to look good, or do you want to be, this guy? But the sorry, um, that's Newport. I'm gonna go out there and talk to him. It's like, with the door shut. I mean, what? You know what I mean? It's so,
He's in a mood. It's
right,
okay.
yeah. But it's all good. But anyway, so I don't know.
I have another one for you.
It's really good.
Are there any artists or creatives that have influenced or inspired your work? And
Um,
local ones too, like,
yeah,
all around.
yeah. When I was younger, when I was a kid, I had the artists that I loved the best were Alexander Calder, Thomas Hartman, Tom Waits, and also I had a book. My mom's company, my mom was a printer, and they printed this book called. It was on Ruth Orkin. It was photos from my window. She lived on Fifth Avenue, not Fifth Avenue, lived on Central Park West, and she had all just photos of the park, and it's just but it like, and I realized, and then like all these artists. I mean, like Tom Waits is nothing like Alexander Calder, is nothing like Thomas Hart Benton, is nothing like Ruth Orkin. And then I realized that, it was their lifestyle. It's like I love like I love they lived where they worked, and they had these workshops, and then like their work and their life were completely intertwined, and all four of them have had really good relationships, and so it was.
That just started out, your life started out that way in school when you just loved the story.
Yeah,
So it's the
sure, yeah.
story, the life story.
Yes, in the process too. So it was that that was evident to me, that the process had to be. I had to enjoy what I was doing, and I even when we were in college, I remember a bunch of us went down to New York City at New Year's, and it was New Year's Day, and we were hanging out there. And I was in a fraternity, and a lot of the guys in the fraternity were all finance majors. You know what I mean? Just which is great. I mean, I saw them all recently, and they're all um, very happy. They all did exactly kind of what they wanted. But I remember we were all talking about, like, about what they were like, and they were like, "What are you studying?" Because you know what I mean. Like, it's like no one really knows what's going on in other people's lives. And I said, I don't know. I said, I'm just kind of like, I said I was an English major at the time, which is stupid because I could barely read. And so like they were like, you'll never get a job. And I'm like, I said, well, I don't know. And they're like, well, no, like you'll never get a job. And I was like, I don't want a job. I really didn't want a job. It's the last thing I wanted. And I really never had a job. I never had a job that I kept more than a year. And I quit my last one in 1997. So it was like it's like I don't feel like I missed out on anything.
Well, it's being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. That's
Yeah,
what you are.
yeah. I don't know if I'm an
Sure.
entrepreneur. I'm not. I got
Really?
you. No, I mean
I mean, what's this
a
is
small business. Entrepreneurs are like people that turn a they create an organization or something that's I don't know. It's just
I
examples.
think it's just work for yourself.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I'm definitely.
That's how I see it
Work for
anyway.
myself.
So, what advice would you give to an aspiring artist looking to pursue a career as an artist?
You have to do it. You just have to do it, and you have to make it a priority. Like, there used to be this kid that would come by my studio, and he was a waiter, and he used to draw on his check pads. You know what I mean? And the drawings were amazing. I even like framed some of them that he gave me, and I would put them on my wall, and some of them sold. And I would be like, go draw. And he would do, like, he'd walk around town and draw like the courthouse, and I'd be like, the old state house, and and they were great. And I said, okay, you got to do this. Go and draw that picture, and I would tell him what to do. And I said, and this will sell. And he couldn't do it. It's like he just like he would be, oh yeah, I got to work, and then one day, like, he was you just waited tables all the time. And I told him, I said, I said, how many hours a week are you making art? And he said, two or three. And I said, and how many hours a week are you waiting tables? He said, 40 or so. I said, you're a waiter, you're not an artist. And it kind of struck him in a way, you know what I mean? And he ended up moving out of town and got married and lives somewhere up north and is now teaching art and is making art now. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's because of me, but it's like, but that my point of that story was that you have to just do it, and you have to make yourself do it and show up to it like it's a job. The Art of War is a great book. That's every artist should read that book and at least once a year, and or listen to it. You can audio book, but and the number one rule in that book is you just got to go and do it. You have to make it your job. Would be
That
my
was
main
actually my
advice.
next question is what's your favorite book, movie, song, or podcast?
Yeah. Well, I definitely recommend that book. And um, podcast. I listen to Chris Williamson, uh, um, I listen to Joe Rogan. What else do I do? I like Bill Maher's his podcast. That called what it's called.
We'll look it up. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, because he needs my
He needs your help.
plug.
Well,
Um,
not him, but
yeah, I know,
people need inspiration.
for sure. And Daniel Huberman is really good, and who else? There's another one. And I like Theo Vaughn. Theo Vaughn has great guests on. And it's like talk about like neurodivergent. Like this guy is like he had a lot of trouble in school and a lot of like early childhood trauma, and but it's like he's completely left it in his wake, and he operates on a level that is very conscious, and like it's like he had on Tara Swat, her name. She's a neuroscientist recently, and like it's one of the best interviews you ever want to watch. It's absolutely hysterical. Like here's this guy that probably didn't graduate high school talking to this, PhD, and like she recognizes how intelligent he is, and like brings it out in him. All the comments were like, "Am I the only one that thinks these two should get together?" Because she's like, it was hysterical. But I recommend that you watch that particular episode. So,
What are you listening to, music wise?
music wise, I listen to Pandora, so I don't have to think about it. But like, I put on Amy Winehouse today because I was like, I wanted to listen to her, and there was some songs that I thought, like, I saw a song in something I was watching, so I brought it up, and then I started listening to that, and then sometimes I like to listen to like uh, is it La Lome? It's the band, and they're kind of like almost like cumbia, you know what I mean? Which is like Mexican dance, this Mexican dance music, and like that's good because it's instrumental, you know what I mean? And it has this good rhythm to it, and so I actually was thinking about getting a metronome because I like the rhythmic going, and I could just listen to that, you know what I mean? Especially when I write, because it's like I want the writing to have a rhythm, and a rhyme, so it's like and then I can choose how fast I want it to go, and so that seems to be like because like I'm trying to force that with the music, and I'm not curating my music because I just don't have the aptitude for that. It's like, you ask me what I like. Can't name any song. I know no lyrics, and I can't hear lyrics, you know what I mean? So it's more the rhythm. And so I'm not really great at knowing what music to listen to. But that's why I like Pandora, because I just listen to it and then it's in the background.
I think I would answer that exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite book that you recommend over and over again, or like a TV show or anything like that? Or is it just the same things as what you said?
Well, what book I recommend a lot is a fiction story by David Halpern, and it's called A Soldier of the Great War. It's excellent, and it's all about. It starts in like 1960, and it's this old man is getting on a bus in Italy somewhere, and he's in Rome, and he's leaving Rome to go out to the countryside to visit his daughter. And he's old. He was in the Great War. He was in the First World War, and he and this is in the first few pages, so I'm not giving anything away. And he gets on the bus, and then the whole crowd sees this young man running for the bus, and the bus driver is just like, pulling away. He doesn't want to stop, and he leaves him. But the kid's so fast, he runs all the way to the next stop, catches the bus. But the bus driver, for some reason, won't let him on, and so the old man stands up to fight for him, and they both end up getting kicked off the bus. So then they decide to walk. It's the last bus of the day, so they decide to walk, and it's going to take them overnight. And they walk the whole way to his daughter's house, and he tells them the story of his life, and yeah, beautiful.
That's great. So, what would you want me to ask that I didn't ask?
I don't know. I saw that question. I didn't know how to. Well, I didn't know how to, but I don't know. No, can't really think of
Okay.
anything. I'm blank.
Oh,
But
then I
yeah,
did my job.
you did your job.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Chris,
my pleasure.
for letting us into your studio today. I felt inspired for sure.
Oh, good.
You are an inspiration.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all next time. Thank you. Yay.